Welcome. Today we're going to be discussing the technique Kneel of Compulsion, its execution, some of the things you should know about its execution, problems that may arise, and how to fix them, and let's start out with what this technique actually is. This technique is actually just a what-if situation for the technique backbreaker. What if things didn't go according to plan with backbreaker, and we'll get into that later as we get through the technique, but keep that in the back of your mind as we're going forward, that this is just essentially backbreaker. So anything that we apply here in the beginning of the technique can be applied to backbreaker also. So what is the ideal attack? The ideal attack is a punch from my flank. So if you notice, all I'm trying to do here is step off the line of attack. There's a problem that could arise here. What if that's not a straight punch? What if it's a roundhouse punch and I'm trying to slip? What I'm going to be doing is walking right into that punch. So what we would do instead of this technique or backbreaker is we would go off and do a different technique that would be more appropriate for that angle of attack. So in this case, we're dealing with a straight punch. We recognize it's a straight punch and we're stepping off that line of attack. So let's talk about that piece. So I'm going to turn towards the camera so you can see what's going on. The guy throws the punch, I step off the line of attack and let that punch go through. But I'm making a big assumption here. The assumption is that punch is going to come straight at me, and if I step off the line of attack, he's not going to divert it in any way, shape, or form in order to compensate for what he's reading I'm doing. So in order to fix that problem, this is what the initial part of the technique is for. It is to move and check and cover what's going on around my head to make sure that this person doesn't deviate that punch on us. And let's look at it from this perspective so I can explain one more thing, is we initially touch the wrist, but then we go to that elbow to obey the rule of anytime you're on the outside of the arm, you want to stay at or above the elbow. And this will effectively control them from deviating that punch in any way, and then we can continue to move behind them. Now there's a problem with this concept. The problem is I haven't done anything to this opponent, so if I'm going to be doing all this stuff and walking behind them, we're making the assumption that they're not going to do anything. That is a problem. So how do we solve for that problem? Well, there's a slight variation that you can do to this initial salvo that you're executing to compensate and do something to them to take their mind off of what you're doing. It also obeys the concept of economy of motion. Rather than going 1, 2 in this direction and then reversing that direction to get to the grab, I can go that direction and stay that direction the entire time. The way I'm going to do that is very similar to what we do in snapping twig. So if this person extends that arm this way, I can hyperextend the arm with my hands, but I'm using the front of my hands. Instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is hook with the front hand, which we use to do the elbow, move it to the wrist, and take my right hand and use the back of my hand and go towards the eyes and hyperextend that elbow that way. Breaking is a possibility, but not actually practical. This is more like a hyperextension, and even if it doesn't hyperextend, it doesn't matter. I can just divert the hand and move the arm out of the way. It wouldn't matter, but the general idea is to try and hyperextend it if you can. And again, as I said, what we're doing is we're obeying the concept or principle of economy of motion by going directly at what we're going to do, and then once we get him in the eye, we're going to try and bend him back like this. So if we turn back this way again, the idea is to control his depth. And to control his depth, I make him bend backwards. That's the optimal way of doing this. But there's a problem with that. What if it doesn't work? What if I begin to do this and he bends forward and I go to get this grab and I can't control his depth? This is where this technique comes into play. I continue to keep my hands up, so if he's trying to move side to side, I can check him. But with backbreaker, we assume that it worked. We get him to bend back, and then we use the upwards because we've got control of that. But now he's bent forward, and I don't have that ability anymore. So what I do instead is now I use the downward to control, to take him down, and then control him that way. So back up again. So the thing that you want to worry about here is where you're kicking. I could kick to the right, or I could kick to the left. My right, my left. His right, his left. Okay, because we're both facing the same direction. If I kick to his right and my right, I haven't really done anything to control what's going on with him. So what we do is what we call a cross-body check in this case. The check is with the leg and the kick. I want to drop him down, controlling the height so that if I can continue to maintain the upward with my hand and the lower with my foot and my knee. I'll get my knee right in the back of his coccyx, and I control this way, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna end up doing leaping crane at the very end. So we've taken him to the ground and do the elbow. We can do this as a sandwich or a vice. What's the difference? If I went 1, 2, or 2, 1, that is a vice. We're gonna be doing a sandwich. This is 1 with 2. This is essentially the end of the technique, but we're left in the middle of a fight situation. We can do anything we want at this point. We could take him forward, go into leap of death, or if we feel we have good control, we can pull him back at this point and continue with backbreaker. Either way, you can continue or with whatever you feel is necessary at that point, but the ideal phase leaves you at this point and you cross out and cover. Okay, so let's do one more quick walkthrough explanation. We step off the line of attack, do parry or parry eye poke. We try to do the grab, we slip off for whatever reason, we can't control that height. We then do a cross body drop kick, side kick towards him, control him up and down with the hands and the knee, do a sandwich, cross out and cover. Okay, one more time, we're gonna do it this way without any explanation. Up. Hope this video helps you. Thank you very much.